It's all about the macro productions.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles and Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you are watching us on Rumble, Band.video, Vigilante.tv, or you are listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate you and the continued support over the past 5 years, 500 episodes and counting. If you want to connect with me, macroaggressions.io is the best website to do that. If you're interested in daily news, why don't you go to activistpost.com. If you want alternative health information, naturalblaze.com. Good spot for both of those. We could not do this show without the help of our sponsors. I try to curate it in a way where I bring products and services in that actually will solve some sort of problems for you. C60 Power has been with us from, almost the beginning, about 4 years now. They make outstanding Carbon 60. You probably have never heard of it before. It's a little tough to tell whether or not it works, but I'll tell you what, I have some proof here. Christian ran me through a test for his health services, and one of the things that we did when we went over it was we got down to a part that measured DNA damage. And the DNA damage gives you sort of an allowable range, like a green, yellow, and red. My levels were so far in the green that it was showing up as not even calculating a number. It didn't even have a number as far as DNA damage to my cells. And I said, whoa, that sounds like good news. He's like, that's very good news. And he says, I've never seen it that low. I said, do you think it's because I've been taking C60 for the past 4 years? He's like, oh my God, yeah, absolutely. I bet you that's what it is. So look, can't say for certain, but my DNA damage is 0. It's not even showing up on the test. And one of the things that the C60 Power does is it gets inside of your body. It's a carbon 60 atom. It searches through for free radicals and it neutralizes them. And then it resets itself, and it does it again and again and again. This is the reason why the guys that were working in nuclear physics labs were using C60. The ones that weren't didn't really make it very long. So this is the most powerful antioxidant known to man. It's hundreds of times more powerful than anything else that's out there, and you probably haven't heard about it. I mean, maybe you've heard about it if you've heard my interviews with Ken the scientist, who's been on here. He's the founder of C60 Power, or I've been talking about it for years. I've been taking it. If you have a pet, my daily routine starts with this. My cats wake me up before the alarm, and one of the cats demands that I give her C60 in a spoon every morning. That is our routine. No bullshit. That cat is going to live forever. I'm pretty sure. But she loves it. If you have an aging pet, if you're, and we love our pets more than maybe most of the people that we interact with. If you've got an aging pet and you're trying to keep them hanging in there, or you've got a pet that maybe is, midway through and you want to keep them for a little bit longer, check out the pet formula. Check it out. I mean, if I've got 0 DNA damage, I don't know what it's doing to my cat, super cat. And maybe old Peanut's gonna live for a long, long time. I certainly hope so. This is made for humans. It works well with animals. The best thing you can do is go to shopc60.com and just read up about it, or you can click the link down in the description. It'll take you there. Read up about it. It's fascinating. It's one of the most interesting products out there, and it actually does what it's supposed to be doing. And if you find something on your way out, use the discount code MACRO to save yourself a little bit of money. Now I have to read this. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. ShopC60.com, promo code MACRO. Also, we're excited to have our newest sponsor, Van Man. They're making outstanding products. vanman.shop is the place that you can go to find out more information about, the Van Man Vanilla Body Butter, which the all-natural ingredients in this thing, grass-fed beef tallow, shea butter, olive oil, honey, vanilla oil. That's it. Try the tallow and honey balm if you're interested. How about the tallow and coconut soap, which comes in a cool package? It's a pink bar of soap, smells really good. I think that's important. And then they've got a stamp on it of the Van logo. The tooth powder is a game changer. I'm never going back to toothpaste after this. And one of the things that they've just recently released, deodorant. All natural deodorant that actually works. It doesn't make you smell like you're twirling at a Grateful Dead concert after about half a day of use, because I've used the non-aluminum ones before in the past. Great. I'm excited that I've got the aluminum out of my deodorant, but I smell like a gorilla, which is not great. So check out vanman.shop. They're doing it differently, and I think you'll agree that it's about time. If you want all natural products and you can't trust your supermarket, you're going to have to go to vanman.shop and use the discount code MACRO on your way out to save you a little bit of money, and God knows we need it at this time. Well, let's talk about the Department of Education. It's such a roaring success. It's been just, everybody's so smart here in America. They've figured they never get blindsided by these rather obvious psyops. They all know how to do their taxes when they get out of high school. They're qualified for a bunch of jobs. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic about all of this. We've got a bunch of dummies in America that are coming out of high school with high school diplomas, which they haven't earned, don't deserve, and are qualified for fuck all. And it's a problem. It's a huge problem. And for those people that are unsure what shutting down the Department of Education would mean, I think they probably assume that it means, so great, we're just not going to educate these kids anymore. We're still going to educate these kids. It's just that we're going to do it differently. We're going to knock it down to the state level. Let the states be in charge of this. Has anything that you can think of in your life ever got better when the federal government got involved with it? No. Healthcare? I want, healthcare for all. Oh, who's going to run that? The federal government? Well, yeah, of course. Show me on the chart where they've done anything where when we centralize control into the hands of the federal government that anything gets better or cheaper or whatever. It doesn't. And it's the same with education. Shutting down the Department of Education is one of the easiest decisions that Trump will ever make. And I hope he does it. And I know that there's talk of him doing it. And maybe by the time this episode comes out, he will have already done it. And good. It's not going to nullify the things that we're going to talk about here at all. Because I think we need to get honest about what has been going on over the past 40 plus years since they created the Department of Education. Maybe subset of that is what hasn't been happening. Nobody's, as George Carlin said, Head Start was the first program they used. Head Start. And then about a decade later, they pivoted and started calling it No Child Left Behind. I thought these kids were supposed to have a head start. How do you have a head start run the program for a decade, and then go, you know what we really need? No Child Left Behind. How the fuck do you get left behind when you have a head start? Well, in America, when the Department of Education gets involved, you know things are going to be real bad real quick. And I've got stats, of course, but you don't need them. I mean, you can use the eyeball test on this one. It's pretty easy. You could just take a look around. Go to a fast food restaurant, interact with some high school age person, a typical fast food restaurant, not In-N-Out Burger. In-N-Out Burger has higher quality for their fast food workers. You meet them, I guarantee you all those people, I guarantee you they didn't come out of the Baltimore school system, if you know what I'm talking about. But the average kid that you talk to that's coming out of high school, good luck to you, man. You are graduating into a world with robots on the not too distant horizon, okay, that are going to replace a lot of jobs, okay? So, let's talk about the Department of Education. Let's talk about what the current situation is. We'll talk about what it has achieved over its 40 years. We'll ask if the return on investment is worth it. I think you're already going to know the answer before that. And then in a very reasonable way, we will offer some solutions at the end of this, because if it was just about complaining, they'd put me on Mount Rushmore. But we've got to have some solutions. And here's the good news. This is fixable. In a world where there's a ton of problems that aren't, the education system of the United States is fixable. Is there an appetite to do that? Well, I don't know. They started this in 1980, and it should have on its tombstone 1980 to 2025. They need to shut it down. This is a no-brainer. And once we get done with this episode, I think you'll understand why. Here's an interesting little tidbit that I think is probably helpful and certainly is connected to this in some way. But before the Department of Education existed in 1980, the average cost of college tuition would rise by about 1% every year. 1%. Do you think that's reasonable? Pretty reasonable. You could go to college for almost nothing back in the 70s. It's very cheap. Even private schools. More expensive by comparison, of course, but not astronomical. Like my college that I went to, USC, I saw just ranked as the #1 most expensive college in the country, crossing $70,000 a year. $70,000 a year. I'll have you know, I did not pay that. I was on student loans and Pell Grants and anything I could get my hands on. I was not fortunate to be one of the kids whose parents wrote the check and everything got, handled and you're in college. I was hustling. I was maybe selling mushrooms. What's the statute of limitations on that? I think we've exceeded that. 1990, yeah, we're probably past the statute of limitations. But I'll tell you what, man, you got to get creative when you got to pay those bills. And if I had to do it all over again, I would not have gone to college. Honest to God. I think that when it comes to what I know now in retrospect, looking back on this, is that the only thing a college diploma shows me in the way of hiring or whatnot, if I've got running a real estate brokerage, if there's an agent that comes in and is like, I've got a college degree, I don't care where they went to school. I don't care what their grade point average is. The only thing it tells me is that you can start something and finish it. You can start a 4-year project and you can finish it. Now, it doesn't preclude me from making a calculation that some people just don't want to go to college, and that it's all about hustle and it's all about motivation. And what did you do during those 4 years? I mean, if you didn't go to college and you sat around smoking pot, playing Call of Duty all day, that's not very productive. But if instead you went to trade school and you got yourself educated there, or you started I started as an intern, I worked at an insurance agency, I learned the ropes, I worked my way up, and after those 4 years of being in there, I was kicking ass, whatever it is. I mean, there's plenty of, college is not the end all be all, for sure. And if you didn't go to college and you don't have that degree, don't let that hold you back. Because to me, it really just shows that you can start a task and finish it. And I think that that's important to know, that people can do it. And there's a lot of times during the 4 years of college where you're tempted to say, this is dog shit. I got to get out of here. And I understand that too. But the idea that college tuition rose by 1% a year back in the 70s, guess what it has done in the 40 years since the Department of Education has been in business? It has tripled. 300%. You would need 300 years for it to reach the level that it's at now if you were just going 1% a year every year like it was doing before. That's how you wind up with a $70,000 USC tuition. Just astronomical and out of control, and 150,000% not worth it. Unless you're going to work in Southern California. And I did have those experiences where you interview for a job and the guy you're interviewing for with went to USC too. And he's like, you're in, like every now and then it opens a door for you. Ironically, the door it opened for me was to the job that I have ranked in my internal list of worst jobs I've ever had. It was the worst job I ever had. So it didn't do me much good after all. But listen, safe spaces are expensive these days. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I don't know if you've checked around, but it's and affirmative action didn't do anybody any favors either, because it took a lot of people that were qualified for acceptance into these colleges and got them thrown out because they didn't have the proper skin color, which I was told is super racist if you do it that way. But under affirmative action, I guess it's fine as long as your SAT scores are garbage. Well, how many legs do you have? Oh, you only have one leg? Well, you're pretty close. Are you, by any chance, I don't know, Native American? Please tell me your name. Oh, good. Well, then you can get into Harvard immediately, even though your SAT scores are shit and you can't spell and you barely know how to read. That's fine. You tick a diversity box, so we'll let you in. So centralization caused this. The centralization of power into the Department of Education is part of the reason why we have the problems that we have here. And so anytime that you can destroy or, light a fuse and blow up a government agency, I am all for it, because make this a states' right issue and kick it back to the states. Now, that being said, I escaped from California with my family specifically because California's version of how they view schooling and vaccination is crazy. Okay, the SB 277 law that went into effect in 2014 or 2015 was 2015. It was too much. It's like, no, we're just not doing that. So, and I recognize that not everybody has the flexibility to just up and move. But when it's a decision that is that important, that I am not going to allow the state, even in private schools. This wasn't a public, private, whatever. This was all schools in California required to have full immunization in order to start school. And if you don't, then you're gone. So this is get the federal government out of anything. What is better when you add government to it? And again, I have to thank David Rodriguez from Valor talking to me about this, getting me straight on calling it government schools and not public schools. The difference a word makes. Public schools, it's like public parks or whatever. It's open to the general public. Public schools, when you call them government schools, makes it sound worse, which it is. It makes it sound a little bit more accurate, I would say. And it makes me think of government cheese, one size fits all, whatever. So I don't care about the 5,000 people at the Department of Education that are losing their jobs, because they should be apologizing to us for doing such a shitty job with the education system here. We shouldn't be shedding any tears or what will happen to the poor workers at the Department of Education? What should have happened to them over the last 40 years? They should have all been fired. I mean, if you're measured by the schools want to measure everything. They want to put these kids through tests and they want to find some sort of number and measure. Well, what about the people at the Department of Education? What kind of failing grades have they been getting for the past 40 years? As billions and billions and trillions of dollars has flowed through this over the years. And what do we get? A bunch of dumb fucks out in the workforce that don't know anything, that are easily going to be replaced by robots, if not immigrants coming across the border. And frankly, I'll be honest with you, if you're worried about the undocumented migrants coming across the border and stealing your job, then that says more about you and your job than it does about them. I mean, if you've been here your whole life and you're going to get pushed out of your job by some guy who doesn't speak English, then you need to take a hard look in the mirror, man. You need to up your game a bit because you have an advantage here. And things are going to get very different. I mean, education comes in all shapes and sizes. And the idea that the federal government of the United States of America is going to tell you what an education is scary if it wasn't, I mean, it's funny. It's preposterous. And it's funny in the sense that it's crazy that the state would be in charge of this. But they've done a really shitty job of teaching kids, and they should all be run out of the office, and hopefully that'll happen. These teachers, not the ones at the Department of Education, but the ones that are the 3 million teachers in the United States that are getting up, going to work every day. I think it's a sliding scale. You have some of those teachers that love their jobs and are great at it and got into it for the right reasons. And then you have a segment that got in there because they get summers off and that's all they saw. And they know they can mail it in. And it's, I'm off by 3:30, and I can go home and do all that. Yeah, I get it. I understand. Almost all of the teachers have bachelor's degrees. They have 95% of them. And 58% of teachers have graduate degrees, which means that after you finish your 4 years of college, you go take another 2 years of college to get teaching credentials or additional degrees that sort of theoretically move you up the hierarchy in terms of making you more desirable to be hired as a teacher, or maybe even it's the bare minimum for getting you hired in the first place. But this tells me something else. This tells me that if 95% of the teachers have bachelor's degree, it means they're probably all in debt with student loans. At least they were, depending on when they went to school. If they went to school in the 70s, as we mentioned, maybe not so much. But if it's anybody that's gotten into teaching within the last 20 years, you probably got debt. And you'll be paying for a long time with your low-paying teacher job, which this debt structure then keeps the teachers dependent on keeping their jobs, even if they aren't happy. And how many unhappy teachers have you seen? I'm not talking about the communists that are infiltrating the classrooms in Portland, putting pride flags and all that. That is insanity on its face. We know that. I'm talking about the teachers that have been teaching just a little bit too long, maybe don't want to be there, maybe despise the kids, maybe have reason to despise the kids after what they've been through for years and years. I'm not even saying that they're wrong to want to get out of teaching, but maybe they've made this calculation and they can't, and they feel trapped. So do you want a teacher that's a hostage or a volunteer? This is a Mike Tomlin quote from the Pittsburgh Steelers. We don't want hostages. We want volunteers. I don't want teachers that feel like they're trapped. I want teachers that want to be there and feel like they have a great way of communicating information to the students. And when you get one of those teachers, you remember them. They change your life in some cases. So this is not a drag on teachers. I understand. I had a teacher friend who worked in the most impoverished part of Las Vegas and would have me come in. I think I've told this but would have me come in. Mr. Charlie would come and speak and to the kids, and the kids were great, man. They're like second graders, and they're so fun and so funny. But when it came time for parent teacher conferences, and everyone is got an incremental every half hour, there's a slot for this parent who's going to come in. 28 kids in the class, one parent showed up. One. So, like, if you don't care about your kid's education, why should the teacher? If the parents aren't involved in this, it's a huge problem. So I get why teachers want to be somewhere else. 44% of new teachers don't make it 5 years. So think about that. You go to school, you get yourself a 4-year degree because you want to be a teacher. Maybe you add on an additional graduate degree because you definitely want to be a teacher. And then 44% of them don't even last 5 years. Now what do you do? Now what do you do with that degree? You're still paying. I'm assuming you're still paying. You still owe student loans, but now you don't have a job in teaching. Now you have a worthless degree. So 55% of teachers want to quit sooner than they thought they would. That is not good. From the time COVID started, just call it April 2020 to May 2022. So full 2 years. And I know that things were weird during that time. You want to take a wild guess how many public school teachers quit just during that 2-year period? 300,000 of them. You can fill the Rose Bowl to capacity Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, like the Rolling Stones are coming into town with all the teachers that quit during a 2-year period. 2 years. That's all it took. Can you blame them? I can't. You're getting told what to teach by the Department of Education. If you're in California, let's break this down, some specifics here. If you're in California, you're working at a school that is in the process right now, most definitely. Maybe it'll happen during summer break if they need to. But at some point here in the next couple of months, they're going to have a construction crew at your school. If you're teaching any school in California, and what that construction team is going to be doing is they're going to be adding third bathrooms to all the schools for the trans kids. For the trans kids to go take a dump in the third bathroom. Definitely not going to get abused in that bathroom. Definitely not going to get beat up in that bathroom. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that I remember being a kid. You make a special bathroom for a special group of kids, you're asking for trouble. California is the king of asking for trouble. They are, oh, and by the way, if you live in California and you pay your property taxes, that money that you're paying in property taxes is the money that is being used to build the third bathrooms. So, money well spent. Instead, if only you could have just pulled it up into a big pile of cash out in your driveway, sprayed it with lighter fluid, and then just lit it on fire. That would have been a better use of the money. But that it goes to California, and so Gavin Newsom's in charge of it now. And that's the way the rules are. What about New York City? Not even talking about New York, the state in general, which is massive, but New York City. You have 10,000 illegal kids. When I say illegal, meaning you and your parents came across the border illegally recently, and there's 10,000 of them in New York City in the schools, speaking over 20 different languages. So now what? Now you're you're a kid who lives in New York City. You've been going to school the whole time. Now all of a sudden, everybody in your class, you can't communicate with them. Your teachers can't communicate with them. They don't speak the language. They don't know what's going on. Everything gets gummed up. The education process gets slower. They start having to waste time on these kids instead of teaching the kids that are actually there, that are speak the language and are ready to learn and are at grade level. Instead, you're 10 years old, we'll put you in with the third graders. This kid reads at a kindergarten level. He's in with the third graders. Well, that's not going to work. You're doing a disservice to the kids, too, on top of all that. And I'm not trying to blame the kids. Obviously, they're innocent in this whole thing. They're getting dragged along by their parents. But this is the reality of it. You know? What about the removal of advanced placement classes for smart kids? Can't have that. Can't have smart kids. You know why we can't have smart kids is because by comparison, they make the dumb kids look, dumb. So we can't have that because everybody has to be equal in this communist utopia. We can't have people that are more educated or have a higher aptitude for learning or greater intellectual horsepower or however you want to define it. Cannot have that. So advanced placement classes have gone away because I'm sure they're racist. I'm sure they're ableist. Your brain works far better than this other kid with ADHD. So therefore you have to, be subject to the same guidelines as this dummy in your class. Great. I'm ready to go to college. Can't have that. The pay is shit for teachers. Let's be honest. $52,368 is what it came out to now. Guess what? That's down a couple percent over the last 15 years. So as inflation rises, as the cost of everything gets more expensive, as you need to make about, 5% more every year, at least 5%, probably more like 10 or 12% more every year just to keep up with the rate of inflation, school teachers, their pay is going down. So please explain to me why you would want to go to college, get a degree, get a graduate degree to get into a school to become a teacher so that kids in your class won't even speak the same language as you. You're incrementally getting paid less every single year. The job is only getting harder. If there's any teachers out there listening, you know that you've had to dip into your own pocket to buy supplies for your classroom or decorations for your classroom or whatever. I mean, you do it because you love the job and it's nice of you to do it, but you shouldn't have to. And every teacher I've ever met has had to do that. Fill in the gaps. Woodrow Wilson kind of spilled the beans on this, though. He talked about this. He said, there needs to be two different types of education. I want a more liberal education for a certain class, and then we want a very standardized, rigid set of just the bare minimums to get by in society. How come we're not? And that's really what that's the facts. If you look at the public school curriculum, it is embarrassing that kids get out of school and they don't know how to pay taxes. They don't know what interest is. They don't know how to, reconcile their bank accounts. They don't know anything. They don't know how to change a tire. They don't know how to change their oil. They don't teach these things. To teach you just the bare minimum to move on. And they never give you the sort of education that will prepare you to be high functioning in this world, unless you go to certain schools. And then in those schools, you're like, oh my God, this is totally different. Even with grade inflation, you heard of that? It's a real thing. Teachers just inflate the grades of students because they just don't like the idea of. It kind of looks bad on them if it's like, I have a classroom with 25 kids in it and roughly a third of them would get Fs if I didn't inflate their grades to kind of, get them to the point where they just barely squeak by. It doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do the kid any good, especially you get to high school and figure out he can't read. That doesn't help anybody. But that's the way the system is set up. But that grade inflation doesn't seem to matter, doesn't seem to help. Maybe that's why Baltimore looks the way it does. Even with grade inflation, they can't hide their failings there, which are staggering. 23 Baltimore schools have 0 proficient students in math. 23 entire schools. not a single kid, not one kid. 10 high schools, 8 elementary schools, 5 middle schools. Do you imagine 10 entire high schools in Baltimore? You go, hey man, come over here. I'm going to give you a quick 10-minute test on reading and math. Not a single one passed. What are you doing? How do you fix that? Well, you get the federal government out of it. That's one way to do it. Elementary and middle school, right? So I don't know, whatever. 3rd grade all the way through 8th grade. In Baltimore, city of Baltimore, if you're in anywhere from the 3rd grade through the 8th grade, there is a 93% chance that you were not proficient in math. 93%. That means only 7% were. That's embarrassing. How do you continue this experiment with these numbers? How? 62 in that same group, Baltimore 3rd graders through 8th graders, 62% of them have failed one or more classes. Failing classes. I honest to God, I can't remember ever failing class. Almost failed a calculus 2 class in college. In my defense, it was being taught by a grad student from China who didn't speak English. And we all went to the teacher and we're like, this is bullshit. Like, maths, Calc 2 is hard enough. Like, I don't need to translate it from Mandarin. This is crazy. But you're failing classes in like the 4th grade? How? I guess because you can't read, right? I guess that's probably the... But it didn't get any better in high school. Baltimore high schools. 41% of the kids in Baltimore high schools had a Jeff Spicoli-esque 1.0 GPA or lower. 1.0 is a D. That's a 60%. That's a D. 4 out of 10 kids in Baltimore high schools, their GPA was 1.0 or lower, and I have to put the or lower in there, or the failed one or more class. I have to put that in there because there's some kids that failed all their classes and still graduated, which doesn't help. But it doesn't help society, and it doesn't help that kid. But when you're running a federal agency like the Department of Education, then you need these stats. You need to show, well, listen, people are graduating in Baltimore. We're fine. Everything's fine. Have you met the kid that graduated in Baltimore? He's stupid. In every measurable way, he's dumb. So the idea that we're going to reimagine the education system based on what the federal government wants you to adhere to, and that they're going to give you criteria, well, everyone's got to be at this level. Boy, it's one size fits all education. Really bad idea. Really bad. 90% of Baltimore Black students don't read at their grade level. 90%. 9 out of 10. How do you do this? Let's talk about the return on investment, because it ain't great. Not great. You're going to want, if you wrote the check for the Department of Education, you would most definitely want to keep your receipt and ask for your money back. What exactly does $275 billion get us each year? That's how much they have to spend. That's almost 5% of federal spending goes to education. The answer is not much. I think I might be onto something here, though. It was right in front of our eyes the whole time. The Department of Education building is called the Lyndon Baines Johnson Building. Do you know Lyndon Baines Johnson? You know the history of this fucking guy? More than happy to set up his boss Kennedy in that ambush by the Israelis. More than happy. Hardcore Zionist, intent on destroying America from within. was happy to give Israel the nuclear secrets in the aftermath of JFK. That's Lyndon B. Johnson for you. A certified lunatic. Story, one of the greatest stories ever told by a journalist. I don't know his name, can't remember who he was writing for. He was writing for the paper at the time, and he was in Texas covering LBJ at his ranch. You know how that, like people, the presidents would go to like Camp David, or Trump goes to Mar-a-Lago, and then they'll do like Q&A, but the media kind of comes down there. At the ranch in Texas, this guy wrote a really nasty piece about Lyndon Johnson. And Johnson had, the guy worked for some newspaper. And during the press conference, he told the guy, come here, come with me. And he said, get in the car. And he had a Cadillac. LBJ had a Cadillac. So LBJ's driving. He puts the driver, or he puts the writer in the passenger seat. He drives through his ranch, on his property, his ranch property somewhere, drives for a long while, gets away from all the other reporters, parks the car, takes the guy's newspaper that he wrote the article, takes the newspaper in his hand, walks in front of the car out into this dirt road. The reporter's still sitting in the passenger seat. He puts the newspaper on the ground, pulls his pants down, takes a shit on the guy's newspaper, gets back in the car, looks at the guy, doesn't say anything, drives him back to the press briefing area, and lets him out. That's LBJ. That's the guy in charge of education. Now, to be fair, it didn't come about during his administration. It was a Carter thing. But when you put LBJ's name on the Department of Education, it tells me a whole lot more about the story. But here we are now with the Secretary of Education being Linda McMahon. We're all saved, right? Linda McMahon, that known for her education prowess, her devotion to education when she was part of the WWE. Wait, what? You're in the world. So the wife of the guy who started the World Wrestling Foundation, later to become World Wrestling Entertainment, is in charge of education for the entire country? Why? How? I mean, we got Betsy DeVos before. Remember her? Part of the DeVos family started Amway. So we've got a multi-level marketing billionaire's wife in charge of education. Great. Now we've got the World Wrestling guy's wife in charge of education. How about we put somebody who is in charge, who has a background in education, in charge of education? Have we ever considered something like that? I know it's crazy. I know it's a wild idea. So this is an old friendship that Trump has had. Trump's in the WWE Hall of Fame. And she needs to be, in keeping this in a sort of wrestling motif here, she needs to be the heel. She needs to be the bad guy. She needs to come in and be the one who says, we're shutting this down. Body slamming the Department of Education from the top ring, from the top rope. Like, let's fucking go. Then do it. Shut it down. Will she shut down Common Core? Do we remember Common Core? Oh, God. I mean, it is a stain on the American education system, Common Core. Because it's not accidental. It was not put here to be like, oh, oopsies, we tried, but it's, the wheels kind of fell off. No. When you go through, as I did for the Octopus book that came out in 2017, I spent a lot of time on Common Core, Rotten to the Core. And the beginnings of Common Core are so nonsensical that the guy who kind of created it for Bill Gates admitted that they didn't have any idea. They didn't know what they were doing when they started it. He was talking about, he's like, those those great ideas that you have on like a cocktail napkin, you draw them all out. He goes, we didn't even have that. We had nothing. It's like, dude, you're not supposed to be admitting this. But in 2010, Obama, in partnership with Bill Gates, launched Common Core standards. And there has been no measurable improvement in education at all in the past 15 years. That's not my opinion of it. That's the studies that have been done measuring the effectiveness of Common Core. That's the nicest thing that you can say, is that there's no measurable improvement. It's not getting any better. I have a follow-up question. Is it getting worse? Yes. That's the question they really need to ask. Is we understand that it's not getting any better, but has it gotten worse? The answer is, well, in fact, they are 2 years behind standard math when you get to college. The average high school senior who is graduating into a college, when they get to their freshman year of college and they take the math tests to sort of rank them to show, are you going to be in traditional, regular freshman, welcome to college freshman math? The answer is, not only are they not qualified to be in freshman math, they are 2 full years behind, which means that they have to take freshman year and sophomore year, they have to take all of that math just to, by their junior year, be at a point where they can take freshman math, college freshman math. That's what Common Core has done. This is the 3 times 4 equals 11 as long as you can show your work. This is Amanda August, the curriculum coordinator, talking about we're not really so concerned about the final outcome of the answer. We're more interested in the why and the how. Nonsense. Insanity. Delusion. But let's be honest about the reality of the education system in America, because the compulsory schooling industry was started by the Rockefellers and Carnegies. And if you know a thing or two about them, they weren't necessarily looking out for humanity, putting it nicely. The Rockefellers and Carnegies designed the compulsory schooling system to mimic a factory. That's the straight lines of desks to mimic a factory where you're going to be working, sitting at rows of sewing machines in the future. When the bell rings to tell you that class is over or that the school day is over, that is not accidental. That's because the bell rings inside the factory to tell you when your shift is over or to tell you when it's time for lunch or whatever it is. So, dog training, 100%. Managing the information, the education that these guys get so that they don't understand that they're being taken advantage of in these factories. You're not going to teach them about how money actually works. Why would you? As soon as they figured that out, they'd understand that central banking was a scam, that fiat currencies were worthless, that what interest does, what compound interest does to these rich people who make a fortune off of compound interest, and to you, what it does when you fall behind in your payments and you have to put things on your credit card and you're getting charged 22% interest, and what that does to just slit your wrists and slowly bleed you out. They don't want you understanding anything about that. That's why you're not really taught that. And Bill Gates takes on up the mantle for the Rockefellers and the Carnegies with his reimagination of the education system with Common Core. And if you know how the Rockefeller monopoly went and you see the Gates monopoly through Microsoft, these people are not altruistic members of society looking for the betterment of humanity. They're eugenicists, all of them. They want depopulation. They want to work you to death. I mean, they want you as human slaves going to work in their factories and digging ditches and working in their coal mines or steel mills or whatever. But they certainly don't want you to be educated about how the system actually works. Because if you were, you would understand that you've got to get outside of the system. It's interesting though. It's this common denominator. It's creating the miseducation system by pedophile depopulationists with billions of dollars and a hatred for humanity. Like, it's just the worst people that you could possibly select to be in charge of educating your kids. And yet we have normalized this somehow. And we put people like Randy Weingarten, that rat-faced, hysteric woman, president of the American Federation of Teachers. She's a subversive, of course. She's a demoralist. She's a proud Zionist. Destroy from within, right? That's you set your sights on America to destroy from within. Isn't that the point of it? So you put her in charge of the American Federation of Teachers. She was the one that was going on and on and on about how the teachers are all going to die if the kids come back from COVID. They're going to infect these teachers. You've seen her. She's rat-faced. You'll know her when you see her. She's always screaming. She's in front of a microphone. She's always breathlessly screaming. So we get rid of the Department of Education. And the reflexive questions from especially the left is, what do we replace it with? Well, you're going to get rid of it. What do we replace it with? Well, I don't know. When you surgically remove a cancerous tumor, what do you replace that with? This now becomes a state issue, which is bound to be better unless you live in New Mexico or anywhere close to Chicago or Baltimore. Then you're fucked. But there is something called charter schools, and they were created in 1994. And the purpose of the charter schools was to increase autonomy and keep the class sizes and school sizes very small. It's better. It's a statistical certainty that as the class size expands, the quality of the education goes down. So you have to have, there's only so much a teacher can do. You can't put a teacher in charge of 30 kids. And yet that happens all the time at the public level. But in the charter schools, they say, well, we'll make it more manageable. There might only be a couple hundred kids in the entire school. And there are 7,800 charter schools throughout 46 states, and they service 3.7 million students throughout the country. So it's a big deal. There's a lot going on there. And one of the things that the charter schools focus on, and it's not in every single case, but it's definitely a priority towards low-income areas, urban demographics, people have some English, and it's a different way at coming at the education system. Very, very far from perfect, admittedly, but it's usually run way better than the government schools. Anything's run better than the government schools. What about this? This is something that they need to take into consideration as the Department of Education comes to a close. What is the role of technology in education moving forward? Because AI is going to make it tricky. There's going to be some opportunities there, I'm sure. But what do you do with it? Information is everywhere, but how much of it is high quality? You have to be careful about, I just think about, was I educated? Sure, I was educated. Take a look at those history books. I passed the exams. Read those history books now. Knowing what I know now, I had to unlearn everything. So great. I was technically educated in history, but my education in history is all wrong. So we're going to have a question of quality over quantity here. It's the reason why homeschoolers boy, man, we'll get to that in a second, but homeschoolers are light years ahead of everybody else. What about robot teachers? I'm not kidding. What about them? Because we're going that direction. Maybe not standing up at the front of the classroom, writing on the dry erase board is C-3PO or something like that. I don't think that's actually going to happen. But the role of integrating technology into classrooms is already happening. I see it at my daughter's school. Actually, and it can be done in a good way. I mean, they all have iPads now. We didn't have it. And or do we fight that battle? I don't know. I don't know if that's a battle worth fighting. Technology is, this is the direction it's going. And for better or for worse, it is the direction it's going. So you want to have your kids knowledgeable. They've got to be up on technology if they're going to, if they're going to succeed in this future, because that's the direction it's going. But we have fact-checking AI out there. We have where's the line? Where's the line in this technology? Not all technology is bad, of course, but where's the line? I mean, this is now a world where you have to make sure that when your students turn in their term paper, it's not written by ChatGPT. Screen time for kids. My daughter has an iPad for a lot of her classroom work. But I know what Steve Jobs talked about, not wanting his kids to have screen time for what it does. So how do there's a battle there. There's dopamine hits, that come from being on this technology. Social media manipulation. What about the future of technology are you still going to have student drivers? Are you still going to have driver's ed in high school? In a world of self-driving cars, where these kids are going to grow up and maybe never learn to drive? I mean, it's something we have to consider. And the push for transhumanism, too. Man, why do I need to learn all this stuff? I'm going to, my Neuralink, I can just upload 12th grade algebra into my Neuralink and I'm good. I'm like Neo from the Matrix. Just give me all the programs. And now I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. So how do you reconcile that? How is the Trump administration, good God, with all his technocratic lunatics surrounding him, what are they going to do with this opportunity to get involved in the education system? I don't want Sam Altman teaching my kids. I don't want Elon Musk teaching my kids. People may think, oh, he's great. He's created all these companies. Fine. Keep him away from the kids. But somebody's going to. Let's talk about solutions. You can always homeschool your kids. That is an option. It's not an option for everybody. I get that. And there's plenty of well, I'm not qualified, sort of thoughts that go through people's heads. Reasonable, too. I would say the same thing. I had to get honest with my math skills. They diminish after a while if you don't use them. I had to be honest with that with my daughter's math classes as they got incrementally harder and more difficult for me to figure out. And also the style, the way in which they do it is totally different than the way I used to do it. So it was creating some problems. So I had to step out, but add a math tutor who could speak that language and could put her on the right path for that. That's a luxury that most people don't have. I fully recognize that. But if you're holding yourself back on the homeschooling because you're going like, fuck, I don't know this stuff. Like I could never teach this. I understand that. and it's a reasonable thought, but don't let that be the thing that stops you, because there's solutions to that. You can pool together with a couple of families and hire a private tutor. If that's something you can do. I mean, if you say, well, I'm not going to send them to government schools. I could, even there kind of, I'm not sure of. I'm going to have to spend something for this education. It's an investment. So maybe you get together with a couple of families and you say, like, let's split the bill on this private tutor that comes in. And maybe it's a variety of tutors. Like, this one's good for math and science, but this one over here is better for English. And some days they come in. Whatever. Figure it out. There are solutions to this. This is the reason why I put a solution section in an activist post, because we recognize the problems, rightly, and we have issues with them, but we have to take the additional step of finding solutions for them. So I put articles in the activist, or in the solution section of Activist Post about homeschooling all the time. Just about any article I can get my hands on for that stuff, I put in there, because I think people need it. I think they need to know that there are resources out there. And hey, your kids will finish school faster. Absolutely. The reason why it takes 4 years to graduate from high school is because you have to wait for all the dumb fucks in your class to catch up. If it was just about the information and you were on a individualized education plan, you wouldn't need 4 years. You can do all that stuff in 2 years. You can get yourself out of that situation. You can shave several years off of that. Now, you may say, I don't want my 16-year-old enrolling in college. Maybe you don't. But just know that you can. You find some like-minded parents. There's plenty of networks out there that you can get online. You can find some in your local area. Get a schedule set. Rotate the house if you need to. Hey, on Mondays we meet at my house. On Tuesdays we meet at that person's house. And you figure it out. It's important. It's a solvable problem, I guess, is my point with all this, is that there are ways to do this. I mentioned David Rodriguez. You can go to thevaloracademy.com, the Valor, VALOR, academy.com, and watch the 3-minute clip that David Rodriguez put out there. He said, I can get your kids out of high school in 1 week. And he can. Watch the video. Bottom line is, with the current situation that we have, with the Department of Education dictating down from governments down to the states and then to the students, kids learn a lot less and they are not prepared for higher education. Government schools have gotten worse because of the Department of Education, not better. That's the bottom line with all of this. And for the record, education comes in all shapes and sizes. You want to educate your kids? Travel with them. Get them passports and go someplace. Geography's boring. Not if you're in Peru. It ain't. Not if you're trying to figure out where we're going. You can make it fun. It can be fun. You've got to find alternative ways. But if you're going to your slave job and you're dropping your kids off at a government indoctrination camp because it's daycare for you, then you get what you get. If your kids are going to free daycare, ask yourself what the cost really is. Pay attention with your kids. You have to pay attention in order to combat the government propaganda. Because these Bolsheviks, they're coming for your kids. It's up to you to prevent them from taking them. Hey, if you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now of sharing it with your friends and family. If you haven't rated the show, go for it. If you want to connect with me, macroaggressions.io is the place to do that. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.